Tina, we are awaiting our president to sign the USMCA, that trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. There are three podiums there because the leaders of all three countries will be there to sign it.
Including the outgoing president of Mexico, I think Nieto, who's about to...
Today's his last day.
Yeah, he's term limited out. I think they get 1 6-year term. So the more liberal, they say, leader will be taking over, but they've been clued in and they've been negotiating together in tandem, in cooperation. So they're going to announce this new deal, which has got to have farmers especially very happy that they worked this out, because there's a lot of nervousness because of the way we've basically taken down the borders when it comes to trade between these three countries.
You can see the media trying to get their places. The president was supposed to do this at 7. Obviously, they're running a few minutes behind. It looks like the desk on the left is where they're going to be signing it, and then they'll speak to the audience on the right.
So, and they may even take some questions from reporters there. Our reporter, Kevin Corke, is live on the scene from Buenos Aires with more on the president's packed day at the G20 summit. Good morning, Kevin.
Packed day indeed, and if you've watched our G20 coverage before, this will seem like fairly standard fare, to be honest, including the upcoming family photo. But as you mentioned, we're certainly looking forward to what promises to be an historic day here at the G20. Now, earlier today, we saw the president for the very first time. He had an opportunity to meet with the president of Argentina. The two men exchanged warm wishes at Casa Rosada, and that set the stage for what they hope will be an incredibly productive summit.
We've known each other a long while. We're going to be talking about lots of good things for Argentina, for the United States, including trade, including military purchase. But this is a great honor to be with you. You are my friend, long time, great family, and you're doing a fantastic job. I want to congratulate you. Thank you.
As we take a look at the schedule, you see the USMCA signing coming up. The leaders of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. This effectively replaces NAFTA. Doesn't really do very much different, but it does address, according to U.S. officials, some of the shortcomings of the previous agreement. Later, the president will have a bilat with the Prime Minister of Japan, also meetings with the leaders of India and Austria. And before I let you go, guys, what will come of the U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum with respect to Canada is of great interest here at the G20. We will look ahead to this morning's signing and see what, if anything, comes of that. As you all know, the Canadians have fought very hard to end those tariffs. Guys, back to you for now.
Thanks, Kevin Corke, live there in Argentina.
Yeah, they say that you forget about they still have steel and aluminum tariffs on it.
Right.
I'm wondering why. I still was wondering why, because I thought it was to push us to a deal. No one wanted to get a deal, so we wanted to say, okay, until we get a deal, this is going to be your tax. And now that we have a deal, do we still need that?
Right.
Well, maybe not. Maybe we'll see that end now that they've signed this deal, or they're going to sign it in a few minutes. But then once they sign it, it still has to go to each country, and it has to be ratified.
Sure. And remember, this is a big achievement for President Trump, but an even bigger one would be a deal with China. And that's really on the sidelines of the G20, what everyone will be looking at, that dinner President Trump is having with President Xi.
But in the Senate, I believe you need 2/3 to verify this new NAFTA, to ratify it, and that's going to be the challenge. And if you want to know why the Paris Accord got turned over and the Iranian deal is scrapped, is because President Obama never went through Congress. No. He didn't even get the majority in the Senate, let alone 2/3 needed, and which makes it vulnerable. If you're President Trump, you don't want to be in that situation again.
Yeah.
Well, President Trump, he did cancel that meeting. He tweeted about it, canceling that meeting with Vladimir Putin. He's also weighing in on Twitter about what happened yesterday with Michael Cohen. He was the president's former attorney, and he said that that he once said he was going to take a bullet for President Trump, and now he's turning on the president, and he's pleading guilty for lying to Congress.
Over a real estate deal that never really happened, in a potential Trump Tower in Moscow.
The Moscow Project is what they called it. And allegedly the president was talking with folks over in Moscow. They were trying to form or build a Trump Tower. And the president is saying, even if that were the case, because Michael Cohen said he lied about the dates. And the president said, even if he was correct, even if we were doing this deal, I didn't do anything illegal. Michael Cohen keeps changing his story. So which Michael Cohen do you believe? The president tweeted
this is what the president's allies have said from the beginning. This is what happens with special counsels. The mandate was to focus on alleged Russian interference in the election. And instead, now they're looking at business dealings. and it's gone far afield.
Right. So what they're saying is the Moscow Project was not a secret. What they're saying is, and Michael Cohen said it, and all the paperwork inside the Trump organization has already been turned over. Now, the president doesn't use email. He doesn't read email. But other paperwork between these people that are trying to put together the proposed project is all in paper, is all in email. That's been turned over. So the Mueller probe theoretically had all this stuff to begin with, and Michael Cohen was just confirming what they already knew, is that he was lying.
Right, meaning
now,
it was not some big secret.
Right.
They put it on the table.
And here are the two things. Who you talk to in the Kremlin to set up this deal, not a political deal, a business deal, and when did it stop? It stopped, Michael Cohen says, I stopped talking about it in January. Well, it turns out there was communications until the spring of 2016,
That's
before
right.
the president locked up the nomination.
So the president tweeting this morning, oh, I get it. I am a very good developer, happily living my life. He's talking about back in 2016 when I see our country going in the wrong direction, to put it mildly. Against all odds, I decided to run for president, continue to run my business, very legal and very cool. Talked about it on the trail, lightly looked at doing a building somewhere in Russia, put up zero money, zero guarantees, and didn't do the project. Witch hunt. So you see, look, he's made this case before, but now he believes that while many in the mainstream media are saying he's finally on the run, now they're going after the president. He's saying, wait a second, guys, this was a business deal that never actually happened.
Well, you ask, why would Michael Cohen do this? It's a plea deal. He is going to be sentenced, and he could get up to 5 years in prison. By saying this and changing his story, it could be a plea deal. He could be getting lesser time because of this.
But I don't really know what it's like. I don't know if you guys have ever bought a building in another country.
No.
Nope.
Or to develop one from the beginning, from the top to the bottom. But if you
Not even one in our country.
Yeah, let me see. I don't think I have that in my portfolio, or else it would have stood out because of fire code and legislation and paperwork I needed to have done, which I didn't. So if you look back what the president has shown interest in, he's always, even when it was the Soviet Union, he's always thought there was potential in Soviet Union to build something.
Yeah.
They talk about even in the 80s in the Washington Post today that he and Ivana went over to Moscow, his first wife, and said, hey, maybe we should maybe get something done here. I don't know if you heard, but it didn't get done.
Right.
In the 90s, he said, let's try to get something done here. I don't know if you heard, but it didn't get done. So in 2015, Michael Cohen went out and starts looking at a Moscow project with this guy named Felix Sater, who has built, was a partner with the president down in Trump Tower, Soho. It never got done, just like one in the Bahamas and the Cayman Islands didn't get done. So in the big picture, what does this actually mean? Elizabeth Price Foley, a constitutional law professor, weighed in.
It's telling us how desperate Mueller and his team has become. After almost 2 years of investigating, spending millions of taxpayer dollars with a team of about 15 really aggressive, experienced lawyers, there's no there in terms of substantive evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. So after going hard at high-level Trump confidants and campaign officials, Mike Flynn, George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, and now Michael Cohen, the best they can manage to do is get single counts of perjury out of some of them. So it shows you that these process crimes are all they've got. They don't actually have any evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, which was their mandate.
Important point. I've been talking to people very senior in the Trump world who've been telling me that essentially Paul Manafort is in solitary confinement in Virginia. He's there all day, and they take him out almost every day, the Mueller team, for half hour, and keep pressing him. Can you say this? Can you say that? And he keeps saying, no, I don't have any evidence of that, meaning collusion, to that law professor's point. And that's the same deal with Michael Cohen, by the way, at least so far. We should caution that we don't know what else Michael Cohen told Mueller. He talked to Mueller's team for dozens of hours. But based on what we saw yesterday, there is still no evidence of collusion, which is where this all started.
If the president came from the world of coaching or the world of advertising, they'd be looking at his connections to Madison Avenue or be looking at his contacts with the NFL owners. But he has his international business connections, which prove a very big challenge for those who are trying to look at people's backgrounds, because when you have investments in Qatar, when you have investments in Scotland and in Ireland, as well as New York City and Chicago, and Florida, and his 18 golf courses, if people want to go through and find something that doesn't add up, you might be able to find something. But I will say this: clearly, it shows. Let's find out what Corsi knows. Let's find out what Roger Stone knows. Let's find out what Michael Cohen knows. Let's find out what Paul Manafort knows, and see if we can create one story. The problem with the Cohen story and the Trump Tower meeting is that Cohen wasn't even involved with that at all. So if you want to draw that circle, how do you do that when the person you've already shown as in the center of this is not involved in that?
Ainsley, what do you think?
Well, I'm wondering about the timing of all of this because he just turned in his written responses, and now all this is coming out. Michael Cohen waited until after that in order to go down to the courthouse down in New York. And Lanny Davis wasn't with him, by the way. He had 2 other attorneys with him. And also with the G20 summit, is there a connection there? I think we have Molly Hemingway. We can ask her about this. Molly, is there anything to that, the timing of all this?
I really don't know if there's a connection, although I do remember that just before President Trump met with Putin at the Helsinki summit, there was a round of indictments that happened at that same time. But I think, you know, these should come when they come, and I think it is worth remembering that the reason this was set up was to investigate treasonous collusion with Russia to steal an election. And so we're getting all these process crimes, which is fine. You actually should, you know, if you lie to Congress, you absolutely should be held accountable. We're not finding treasonous collusion with Russia to steal an election. And we also are having a problem where only one person who has lied to Congress is being held accountable, even though we have a lot of people who have done it, even on the Russia story. So Christopher Steele was given a criminal referral. The 2 senators did a criminal referral of Christopher Steele, who's the guy who kind of wrote that whole Russia conspiracy document. They know he lied to federal investigators, and they referred him. I haven't heard anything about it. You have Glenn Simpson, who was Christopher Steele's boss. He gave testimony that was in conflict with what Bruce Orr, a DOJ official, gave. So one of them, at least, is lying to Congress. We haven't heard anything about that. You have, you know, there's just, it should not just be that one person gets in trouble for lying to Congress. Everybody should.
What about the kid gloves that Hillary Clinton and Cheryl Mills and her team got in terms of whether their stories were consistent?
Hillary Clinton, I mean, we know from the Inspector General report that came out a few months ago that she lied to the FBI about whether she knew how classified systems work. They declined to charge her with a crime, which is something that they have the right to do. But if you're going to go easy on one political party, you should probably go easy on the other one, or conversely, you should have the same standard, whether it's one party or another. Particularly since in this case, we have so much evidence of the FBI being engaged in a very political
Are you actually saying there should be equal justice under the law? Is that what you're saying?
It's a good way for people to have confidence in the FBI if they think, well, they play it straight no matter who's in front of them.
So, Molly, here's what Adam Schiff, the antagonist, the protagonist here against the president, says if the president and associates were being untruthful in real time as they were pursuing this deal, what does it mean now about how much we can rely on what the president is saying about any continuing Russian financial interests? What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, if someone has evidence of something wrong, then they should bring that forward. But in this country, we don't decide that someone's guilty and then go on a fishing expedition until we find something that they did. And again, it's not that Donald Trump is a businessman that we need to find out. We already knew that. We knew he's a global businessman. What was alleged was treasonous collusion, and not just this guy is someone we don't like, so we're going to punish him and anyone who worked with him. That's a very, Stalinist type approach to criminal justice. It's not how we're supposed to do things in this country. Well, and also, Adam Schiff did something that I thought was inappropriate that people didn't point out, which is he said something about how the special counsel should handle the investigation. Now, every time anyone on the right says anything about what the special counsel should do, we're told that this is obstruction of justice. Adam Schiff came out and said that the special counsel needed to sit down and do an in-person interview with Trump. Nobody said anything about that, even though that he's the incoming head of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, so he should be careful when he's talking.
Well, on that note, Michael Cohen pleads guilty, and he thinks it's going to help him because it's going to make the president look bad. And to your point, the left media just goes wild, and they're saying that the president needs to step down today. But if there was nothing illegal here, if the president, no matter if they were still talking about it in the summer during 2016, and the date did change, if there's nothing illegal, why would Michael Cohen do this?
I don't actually understand why he thought he needed to lie. I mean, I understand that this really is a very political investigation, and that makes people nervous, rightly so. But, you should always make sure that when you are under oath, you are telling the truth. But all of these things that we've seen, almost everything related to the Mueller probe, has either been a process crime, which is just not, that's not the standard that we should be demanding for something like this, or it deals with stuff that was well before the campaign, tax evasion from many, many years ago. And that's something you just want to be so careful about, because it gives the impression that what's happening with this probe is that political enemies are upset that Donald Trump won, and they're going to use the power of the state to go after people.
We saw that overstepping with the Clinton probe all those years ago. He ends up with a 60+% approval rating. Molly, we're looking now back in Argentina, where the president's running a little late, but they're going to make a formal announcement talking about the new NAFTA between these three countries. We understand the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, is there, and he might be coming out shortly. Real quick, this is pretty significant. What are the chances of ratification, though?
I think that, one of the things that's tricky about trade agreements is you don't always know what's in them when they're debated and agreed upon by the countries, and then you have to get it ratified, at least in the United States. But it seems like this is a very healthy updating of NAFTA. People forget how many decades ago that was signed. There are a lot of industries that were not really well developed when the original NAFTA was signed. And also you had some real uneven disparities where, labor laws in the United States are much more stringent than in Mexico, which gave Mexico an advantage when competing for factories, but sometimes their labor standards were so low as to be an unfair advantage. So evening out some of these problems is something that was high time to do. And it sounds like all three countries have done a good job making it in each of their best interest. And that's exactly what you want, to make this a powerful negotiating bloc versus the rest of the country.
Yeah, Molly, as we await the president's arrival there, that live picture in Argentina will stay on it. Back to your point about the media and Michael Cohen. I seem to remember about a year ago when George Papadopoulos pled guilty to lying. And as you say, people should tell the truth on either side of the aisle when they're confronted by the FBI or Congress. But at that time, it was roughly October 2017, you had people in the media saying Papadopoulos is flipping on the president. Even though he's a low-level advisor, the walls are closing in, and then he gets 2 weeks in jail.
It's every single time there's anything like this, we're told, well, this is it. This is the end of the presidency, and it's almost comical. Even earlier this week, we were told that there was we had the smoking gun bombshell, which is that Paul Manafort had secretly met with Julian Assange 3 times in 3 years, and nobody had detected it, and somehow the Guardian newspaper had figured it out. Well, it turned out that it wasn't true. As so many of these updates about Russia are not true. And when you finally get down to it, again, it's just these, tiny little things versus what we were promised, which was that Putin had bought Donald Trump and he was in his debt. I mean, you don't have to be that smart to figure out that that's not true just by looking at U.S. policy over the last couple of years. We've been very tough on Russia, and even just, in recent weeks, we're not happy with them, and we're behaving that way.
But Molly, on that point, do you acknowledge the president could have been tougher in Helsinki? I mean, he has had sanctions against Russia. You're absolutely right. The president has helped with military aid to Ukraine, for example, which Russia didn't want. You're right about that.
Expelled countless diplomats from this country.
But in Finland, he could have been tougher.
I mean, obviously, he could have handled that situation much better. It's also true that we've had intelligence agencies kind of playing games with this story since the very beginning. You might remember that they took seriously this, frankly, silly dossier. They briefed the president on it almost to threaten him, it sounded like, just before he took office. I think there's a reason why he doesn't have the most trust in these intelligence agencies, just because they haven't taken their role very seriously. They haven't behaved in a way that suggests that they are worthy of some of the powers that they hold. And it has not redounded to their benefit, I fear.
Molly, let's talk about what's about to happen. They're about to sign that USMCA we are with Mexico and with Canada. How significant is that?
I think it is, we've had a lot of trade agreements that we've developed over the years. In general, they've been beneficial. That doesn't mean that they're going to be beneficial in perpetuity. Sometimes you need to update things, and this was something that absolutely needed updating. We were seeing that we'd lost some strategic advantages. We'll need to know, we'll need to go over all the details and make sure that it's working well. But it's important, for our position relative to the rest of the world that we have a good, strong North American bloc, and we do. I mean, it's good. It's not just important for economic reasons. It's also important for foreign policy. We have a rising China that has so much strength and has been able to, frankly, take advantage of the, we sort of treated them like they were a free trade country, even though they're not, and they've really benefited from that. We need to be strong against that, and this is part of being strong.
What I also think is going to be significant, it turns out there have been high-level talks leading up to this dinner meeting with President Xi of China. So a lot of people say, well, if there's no preamble talks and prerequisite talks, don't look for much to get done. And it turns out there have been high-level talks. And the president pushing and pulling, 1 minute he's in, 1 minute he's out. That's clearly a strategy. So the world markets are looking at this. The president's got to go, I think, at this point, for complete victory, in that he's got to reconfigure the relationship we have across the board with China. This is the moment, or else we might not have this moment again.
I don't know. I mean, we're in a good position now. We might be in a good position in the weeks or months to come as well. Everything that we kind of talked about.
I don't mean today. I mean overall.
Okay.
This is the term. This is the era.
And we've talked a lot about trade war and whether it's a good idea to get into a trade war or not. But the 25% tariffs that were initiated by this administration, it turned out to be, according to a recent study that came out of the EU, China is ending up having to pay for most of those tariffs. American consumers and producers are only paying for 4.5% of those tariffs because they chose products that were really smart to choose, that worked better in our interest than it was in China's interest. Those tariffs are actually hurting China quite a bit. I think they're probably ready to start talking. They might be more ready to talk even in a few more months of getting squeezed.
And China's economy in a perilous place right now. So you're right. They're on defense. That's what the president has been saying, that he's been on offense with this. We should note that Ivanka Trump has just sat down there in the front row waiting for the president's arrival. John Bolton, the national security advisor, has arrived as well. You can see Ivanka Trump. That's a live picture right now. Greeting other dignitaries, a sign that the high-level White House people are in the room now, that we should be seeing the president and the other leaders.
Jared Kushner just got a big award, the highest award you can get from the president of Mexico.
Because he has been a lead negotiator for the U.S.
All right, he's been such a part of so many major things that have happened in this administration. But I think we all agree that we expected Ivanka to have a good seat at this, right? She does seem to have a good seat up front in all these things. So up front, they'll do the formal signing. I'm wondering, too, personality. Justin Trudeau and the president had this famous riff last time at the G8, maybe G9, and they left, and he didn't like the communique at the end that Justin Trudeau said. So the president rescinded it. They left without one. I'm wondering if these things overall, because I know the president doesn't take it personally. He gets over the Rand Paul rift, the Marco Rubio rift, obviously the Lindsey Graham 1%. Here's your phone number. Do you sense, Molly, that among these leaders that it's not, they are understanding that it's not personal for the president? There's the personality, and then there's the deal.
I don't know, actually, in this case, and Justin Trudeau seems kind of an emotional type world leader. But it is important that all countries work in their own national interest. That's a thing that makes sense for negotiation. It's something that is very different about this current era than we saw in previous decades. What is happening in the United States is something that you're seeing happening all over the world, where people are demanding that economic trade deals aren't just in the interest of the elite power structure, but that they work for the workers in the country as well, and that people are thinking through how trade agreements aren't, they're part of a larger national policy. And so I think you're seeing that change, and some of the global leaders are from the old era, and some of them are from a newer area that reflects this understanding.
So what you're saying is maybe we're so focused on the GDP, and other people are saying, what about us? Don't tell me what the GDP is. I lost manufacturing. We no longer make furniture in this country. We're no longer making cars in this country. Yeah, textiles. Why are we, don't tell me about this great deal. Middle class is paying the price, and they're feeling that all around the world.
Yeah, there's no question that free trade is great for, we've known this for hundreds of years, that tariffs hurt the economy. What I found interesting about Donald Trump's approach to this and his administration's approach is they're not seeking high tariffs in perpetuity. They're seeking high tariffs to get to lower tariffs. They're seeking high tariffs to come up with better trade agreements or to deal with some of the problems. For instance, China steals intellectual property.
Pardon me, Molly. It sounds like the president is being announced along with the leaders of Canada and Mexico. Let's go into the room right now live and see them.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the President of the United Mexican States, and the Prime Minister of Canada.
Thank you very much. We're gathered together this afternoon for a very historic occasion. the signing ceremony for a brand new trade deal, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. So important. I'm honored to be here with President Enrique Peña Nieto. He's become a great friend of Mexico, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who has also become a great friend. This has been a battle, and battles sometimes make great friendships, so it's really terrific. With our signatures today, we will formally declare the intention of our three countries to replace NAFTA with the USMCA, a truly groundbreaking achievement, modern-day agreement. I want to thank U.S. Trade Representative Bob Lighthizer and his entire team for their tremendous effort and the efforts that they've made all throughout the last almost two-year period. Thank you as well to Jared Kushner, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Secretary of the Treasury Steve Mnuchin, and Director Larry Kudlow for their hard work and untiring devotion throughout the negotiation process. Peter Navarro, thank you so much for the work that you put in, and so many others. The USMCA is the largest, most significant, modern, and balanced trade agreement in history. All of our countries will benefit greatly. It is probably the largest trade deal ever made also. In the United States, the new trade pact will support high-paying manufacturing jobs and promote greater access for American exports across the range of sectors, including our farming, manufacturing, and service industries. As part of our agreement, the United States will be able to lock in our market access to Canada and Mexico and greatly expand our agricultural exports, something we've been wanting to do for many years. This is an amazing deal for our farmers and also allows them to use cutting-edge biotechnology and eliminates non-scientific barriers. Our nations have also agreed to innovate new measures to ensure fair competition and promote high wages and higher wages for U.S. and North American auto workers. The auto workers are a tremendous beneficiary. Under the USMCA, at least 75% of our automobiles' content must be manufactured in North America, and 40 to 45% of automobile content must be manufactured by North American high-wage labor in order to gain preferential access to our markets. This will help stop auto jobs from going overseas, and it will bring back auto jobs that have already left. Many, many jobs are already planning to come back. Many companies are coming back, and we're very excited about that. This landmark agreement includes intellectual property protection that will be the envy of nations all around the world. The USMCA also contains robust new provisions on digital trade and financial services and the most ambitious environmental and labor protections ever placed into a major trade agreement anywhere at any time. We have dramatically raised standards for combating unfair trade practices, confronting massive subsidies for state-owned enterprises, and currently, if you look at it, currency manipulation that hurt workers in all three of our countries. The currency manipulation from some countries is so intense, so bad, and it would hurt Mexico, Canada, and the United States badly. We've covered it very well in this agreement. These new provisions will benefit labor, technology, and development in each of our nations, leading to much greater growth and opportunity throughout our countries and across North America. In short, this is a model agreement that changes the trade landscape forever, and this is an agreement that, first and foremost, benefits working people, something of great importance to all three of us here today. President, I must say, Peña Nieto and Prime Minister Trudeau, we've worked hard on this agreement. It's been long and hard. We've taken a lot of barbs and a little abuse, and we got there. It's great for all of our countries. Thank you for your close partnership throughout this process. This new agreement will ensure a future of prosperity and innovation for Mexico, Canada, and the United States. I look forward to working with members of Congress and the USMCA partners, and I have to say it's been so well reviewed, I don't expect to have very much of a problem, to ensure the complete implementation of our agreement. Enrique, I want to thank you on a personal note, and I want to wish you the very best. This will be your last day in office, so that's a very auspicious day when you can sign something so important, but we really do appreciate it. I think I can speak for Justin when I say that. We both agree he's a special man, and he's really done a good job. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. So I just want to congratulate you on ending your term in office with this incredible milestone. It is really an incredible way to end a presidency. You don't see that happen very often. I look forward to working with President-elect Lopez Obrador for many years to come, and our relationship, I know, will be a very good one. We've had great conversations, and I think we're going to have a great, great relationship. And I would now like to invite the President and the Prime Minister to say a few words, and perhaps we can start with Justin, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you. Justin, please.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to Presidents Trump and Peña Nieto. Donald, thank you for your words this morning. Thank you for pulling this event together. Enrique, this, as Donald said, on your last day in office, it's a wonderful pleasure to see you and to be here on this historic moment. Le nouvel accord de libre-échange nord-américain maintient la stabilité et la croissance pour l'économie canadienne. Il protège des millions d'emplois à travers le pays, renforce la classe moyenne et crée de nouvelles opportunités pour nos entreprises. C'est pour ça que je suis ici aujourd'hui. Parce que la menace économique qui posait l'incertitude entourant le processus de renégociation était sérieux et il fallait agir.
So we saw the President of the United States make his opening remarks, walk out, stand in the middle, and really salute President Nieto as his last day is today. After a 6-year term, he's term limited out. Now Justin Trudeau comes out, and he's got French-speaking Canadians as well as English-speaking Canadians, so he's repeating himself, so that's where we're jumping in. I will say this, the word is that Canada feels as though there's more things to work out at the USMCA, that there's still some details here. I'm wondering if he alludes to that.
Because the president made clear he got a good deal. He's got Kelly Craft, the U.S. ambassador to Canada. She's been working on this for all along, as well as Bob Lightsauer, the U.S. trade rep. We're now hearing Justin Trudeau. Let's go back to him.
Trade renegotiation process. Uncertainty that would have only gotten worse and more damaging had we not reached a new NAFTA. But when faced with this challenge, Canadians came together and rolled up their sleeves. Canadians from every order of government and walks of life put their country's interests first and worked hard to achieve a new, modernized agreement that will protect jobs, strengthen the middle class, and create new opportunities for businesses. Nous avons plus de travail à faire pour réduire les obstacles au commerce et encourager une croissance économique.
All right, so you can see Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, going back and forth between
speaking
English
and French, then English.
We're waiting to have the translation for you, but in the meantime, we're talking, we've got Stuart Varney we'd like to deal in. It's a big deal for the president. His critics said all along, back to the campaign, you can't renegotiate NAFTA. It's never going to happen. And you know what? It happened.
It's another example of him doing what he said he would do. Right from the moment when he declared his presidency, his candidacy for the presidency, he said, right, NAFTA, we're going to renegotiate that, and he has. Now we have USMCA, and I think it is a Trump win. America gets a lot out of this, especially access for our farm products, dairy products in particular, in Canada. We've been pushing for that for a long time. We got it in this new deal.
Explain that. What does that mean?
Well, Canada has always protected its farmers, especially its dairy farmers. We wanted to break down that protectionism, and we did. America broke through. What we got was access, more access for our dairy farmers and other farmers into the product in Canada.
I think he's speaking English again. Let's watch.
Resilient, strong % of Canada's total exports is secure. And that's essential for businesses, families, jobs, entrepreneurs, and hardworking people in every corner of our country. As I said, the task isn't done. There is more hard work ahead to build resilient, strong economies that support families everywhere in Canada. As I discussed with President Trump a few days ago, the recent plant closures by General Motors, which affects thousands of Canadian and American workers and their families, are a heavy blow. Make no mistake, we will stand up for our workers and fight for their families and their communities. And Donald, it's all the more reason why we need to keep working to remove the tariffs on steel and aluminum between our countries. Les tarifs sur l'acier et sur l'aluminium demeurent toujours entre nos pays. Et tant qu'ils seront en place.
So the President Trudeau just brought up, hey, Donald, why don't we get rid of the steel and aluminum tariffs that you put on?
That's correct.
This deal is signed and it's still there. Why?
Yeah, those tariffs on steel and aluminum are still there. This agreement does not cover steel and aluminum
Why
tariffs.
not take them off?
As you heard from Prime Minister Trudeau, he wants them off. Well, that's one of the details. It's a big detail, of course, but that is going to be negotiated as this thing moves forward. Remember, it's not yet been ratified by our Congress, and it's not going to be ratified by the current Congress. We have to wait till the new Congress takes effect in January. That's when the ratification vote will
There's
be
a
taken.
Democratic House, but you have more Republican seats in the Senate.
That is correct.
Oh, it can't be ratified now in lame duck?
No, it's not going
They
to be.
chose not to.
The agenda is so crowded that they can't.
Okay, we're going to listen back in.
President of the United States, Donald Trump, Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, distinguished members of the delegations joining us today, to both, I would like to thank you for your generous remarks. That is precisely the last day of my administration, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. During the last day of my administration as president, I am honored to be here standing next to the leaders of two countries who are friends and partners in this signing ceremony of the new trade agreement between Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. The agreement that we will sign today expresses the shared will by our three nations to work together towards the well-being and prosperity of each one of our societies. This day is the culmination of a long process based on dialogue and negotiations that allow us to overcome differences and to conciliate our visions. Once signed, the agreement will be sent to our Congresses for its ratification. It will be then when this innovative instrument bears fruit by offering a more inclusive, firm, and modern foundation for our future exchanges. The negotiation of USMCA allowed to reaffirm the importance of economic integration in North America. For more than a quarter of a century ago, our three countries have maintained very tight trade relationships. Such trade has transformed Mexico. Today, our exchanges abroad represent more than 70% of our gross domestic product. And this has contributed to the fact that today the benefits of trade with the world are broadly valued by the Mexican society. Revamping the new trade agreement was aimed to preserve the view of an integrated North America with a firm belief that together we are stronger and more competitive. In spite of the progress that we've seen in our trade relationship in the last 2 decades, there was still a long road ahead of us to take advantage of each country's potential. The United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement gives a renewed phase to the process of integration. This process achieved on the first place to modernize our trade framework. Trade agreements shall not be static. Agreements need to move along with the economy and should be according to the needs of our society. The inclusion of new provisions on e-commerce, information technologies, and trade enabling practices are now part of the agreement. In fact, 1/3 of the agreement includes topics that were not included in the current agreement. The renegotiation process of the agreement allowed our region to move into a more inclusive integration, a type of integration that listens to the demands of our societies. 24 years ago, NAFTA set a new benchmark for trade agreements back then. Today, USMCA
All right, we've been listening to the President of the United States, along with the outgoing President of Mexico and the Prime Minister of Canada, hailing this new trade deal.
It's kind of interesting that President Nieto chooses to be the guy. Because he's out. I mean, why not let the new guy take this?
Listen, if you're going to go out on a good note, right?
Well, he wants to get the credit, but it's probably not. I mean, I guess technically it's still his gig, but have the other guy there because he's got to. Yeah, he's got to.
Is Obrador going to be in favor of this? Because they still have to ratify this.
I don't know.
No, he's been dealt in through the entire negotiation.
Yeah, dealt in, but how does he approve of all the details which have yet to be worked out? Which side of the fence is he going to come down on? All of these details, like steel and aluminum tariffs, for example. I don't know where he stands on that. I
wonder why the president keeps him in place, because it was to get them to the table. He brought them to the table. Why are they still in place? Like, I don't know the president's school of thought with that.
This has been a negotiating process that's gone on for months. They've got some things settled, like auto tariffs, for example, like dairy farmers, but they wanted to get this signed before Peña Nieto, the outgoing president, actually outgoes.
The inauguration is this weekend for the new president.
Right.
The inauguration is this weekend.
Yes, exactly.
So when they do sit down and discuss, they're talking trade right now, but this relationship can also help when we talk about caravan and granting asylum down in Mexico versus them coming to our country, right?
The incoming Mexican president has a huge problem on his hands because there is now a health and security crisis right at the border on the Mexican side of the border, with all the caravan people arriving by the thousand in tent cities. That's a problem that Obrador has to deal with, and I don't know how he's going to deal with it.
I know how you can deal with it. You can start bolstering up your southern border. It would help both of our borders on the northern side.
Sure, that's long term.
Yeah, that could be, but that could be tomorrow. I mean, you could put some troops down there. You could throw up fences.
On the Mexico southern border you're talking about?
Who's going to do what with those caravan people who are now living in squalid conditions on the other side of the border? Is America going to ante up some money to get them to go back home or treat them? Is Mexico going to do that? Who's going to take care of this problem? I don't know at this point.
Stuart, sometimes these G20 summits can be a snoozer. Instead, we're seeing it kicked off right here with a big win, as you said a moment ago, for President Trump. And I'll let you, you're chuckling.
Look, this is the most important G20 meeting in a decade at least.
Why?
But does this set the table for the meeting with China?
Yes, to some degree it does. This is the Trump show, going global. He is the man of the hour. He's got a changed relationship with every single world leader, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's Europe, whether it's Mexico and Canada. There's a changed relationship. And here it all comes together. They're all in one place.
Right. Now we understand after Nieto has just wrapped up his comments, they're going to open it up to the press and maybe take some questions.
Well,
but
first
wait.
they're going to sign
It looks like they're going to go over and sign.
Officially
You got to get the pens out.
Right. Is there a reason why they would put our president in the middle? Is it because, number one, economy?
I would guess so, yes.
All right.
I would think so.
Let's listen in and see if they have anything to say as they sign. We'll be back in a moment. Listen in.
Let's go.
Let's go. We're ready. Let's go. Let's go.
We'll trade. Yeah, that's fine. That's all right. Which is the one that matters.
Each of us get a copy. Sounds very good, yes. Excellent.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. You guys will hold that up. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the team.
So we're about to see if he's it. They are not going to take any questions. They're all going to leave. And as we're watching this, the USMCA get signed, the new NAFTA, I'm wondering how many more times we're going to see this, because one of the main things the president wants to do is reconfigure trade relationships with Japan, with the EU. The first one was NAFTA, and then later on, China.